there are many ways that people can try to take advantage of others, and no one was off limits, not even those who are facing difficult decisions. So in today's Straight Talk segment with our funeral experts, we go through some ways of protecting yourself and your funeral investment. Jeff Edwards is the owner of Edwards Funeral Service. He's joined by Beth Buxton, a licensed funeral director. Welcome back to the show, both of you.
Thank you.
You know, it is a shame that we even have to bring up this topic, isn't it? But you told me, Jeff, that it's timely because there's just been, and let me get 3 cases in Ohio this month alone?
This month alone.
Of where something like this happened to folks. What did happen?
There's cases where funeral directors or funeral homeowners have not followed the law and trusted prepaid funeral monies properly. And, you know, you can only do that so long before you get in trouble. The law is very specific on what we have to do with pre-need funds that belong to other families, and they're just not following the law.
So they were using that money for their own benefit, either putting it back in their business or using it personally?
Yes, that's typically what has been done in the past, and it's unfortunate, but it's coming out more and more. I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times this year alone.
Yeah, just this past month. Beth, how does that even happen? How do people get caught up in something like this?
It can happen in a number of ways. Realistically, in our industry, things have changed over the last decade. Cremation rates are on the rise. People aren't utilizing funeral homes like they used to for funeral services. They can go to their local church and have a memorial service without us. So it's really cut, I think, into the day-to-day operations as far as the liquid assets that funeral homes have to operate from and pay their daily bills. So unfortunately, when they're obtaining these advanced funeral plans and collecting money from families, instead of entrusting that like they should in a trust account or an insurance policy, they're basically taking those monies and just using them as their own income.
Well, we wanted to mention that the 3 that were cited this month were cited, their licenses were revoked, so when it is discovered, things do happen, criminal charges are filed, but nobody wants to get to that point. And Jeff, obviously, what are some red flags, some signs for folks that the antenna should go up and go, hey, something's not right here?
Well, the law was just recently changed a couple years ago that requires the funeral homes to place that money in a trusted vehicle, if you will, an investment vehicle. And the new change is that investment vehicle must notify you directly, not through the funeral home, what the funeral home has done with those funds.
So a third party is calling you and letting you know this is what's going on?
Typically it's done by either you're getting the policy in the mail or you're getting a letter from the trust fund in the mail.
Okay.
And if you don't get that, within 45 to 60 days after you've given money in an advanced planning situation to a funeral home, that's the red flag.
Beth, there are some things that folks can do, and we were going to outline them here. And one is to select a funeral home that's upfront. What do you mean by upfront? How upfront should they be?
A funeral home, when you go in and you're trusting them with your funeral arrangements and you're planning to prepay, you need them to give you documentation that day of what you've selected in an itemized format and let you take that home. If they're not willing to give you paperwork, and I've heard that happen, they'll tell the family, I'll mail that out later to you. Don't accept that. Take documentation home. If you have questions, ask those questions. If there's hesitancy there and you're not feeling like something's right, don't pay that day.
And sometimes your gut tells you something's off.
That's correct. Make sure you get a receipt. I've had so many families tell me they've walked out of that funeral home without a receipt of what they've spent. Whether you've spent it with a debit card, credit card, personal check, or cash, get that receipt from the funeral home that you've paid, because later, if you don't get that documentation in the mail from that insurance company or that trust account, at least you have your documents from the funeral home that you paid, and then you can go to the State Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors or the Department of Insurance and show them what you have.
And Jeff, folks shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. This is their money that they're handing over. They should be able to ask those questions.
Absolutely, and they should. It's their money. They need to make sure that it's being trusted properly so that it's there when the need is, when it's needed.
These are some great ideas about the documentation, about knowing where the money's kept. Beth, is there a recourse of action for consumers who find themselves in this difficult situation that looks like they've lost their money?
Sometimes there is, and unfortunately sometimes there is not. If mishandling of funds has happened before that money's become trusted in that insurance carrier or in that trust account, a lot of times that family's up the creek without a paddle. There's just no recovery fund yet in the state of Ohio through the Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors. But if it's already been entrusted, there is some recourse there through the Department of Insurance, through the Insurance Recovery Fund, or if it's been entrusted in the trust account through a bank, it's insured through FDIC.
Well, great
basically.
advice, and obviously, as you said, get documentation and know where that money is. Thank you both for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.